Life seemed perfectly ordinary with my husband, Ryan. Our evening routine, his light snoring, our shared love for board games on Sunday afternoons. But it all changed one night when I caught him taking late-night calls with a woman named Clara. He assured me she's just a friend, but my gut told me otherwise. As I delved deeper, I uncovered debts, poker games, a formidable Russian named Voronov, and a web of deceit. From high-stakes poker tables to the dark underbelly of the gambling world, join me on this roller coaster journey of betrayal, revenge, and the lengths one will go to save what's dear to them. Every marriage has its secrets, but nothing prepared me for this. My name is Amanda, and this is my unusual story. It was a mild Thursday evening. I was curled up on the couch with my cat, Whiskers, engrossed in the latest episode of my favorite crime drama. The apartment was dimly lit, with the orange glow from the television casting shadows on the walls. The muted hum of the city outside only added to the cozy ambiance. But that ambiance was shattered when I heard it. My husband Ryan's phone vibrating on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the clock. 2:37 a.m. Who calls at this hour? I thought to myself. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Ryan was in the shower, probably unaware of the call. Curiosity got the best of me. I walked over, and the screen displayed unknown caller. I ignored it and went back to the couch, but the nagging feeling persisted. Over the next few weeks, these late-night calls became more frequent. Each time, Ryan would glance at his phone, his face unreadable, and step out of the room to take the call. Every time I asked who it was, he'd say, "Oh, just an old friend catching up." But there was something off about his demeanor. The confident, easygoing man I knew seemed to be replaced by someone edgy, almost secretive. I felt it, that unsettling knot in my stomach. Suspicion started to creep in. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, I found a tiny note in his jacket pocket. "Meet me at the park, 8 p.m. No name, no explanation. I have to know, I said to myself, anxiety and determination warring within me. I decided to take things into my own hands. Revenge? No, not yet. But if he was playing games, I was ready to play them tenfold. It was a risk, but I knew I needed evidence. So I borrowed a voice-activated recorder from a tech-savvy friend and hid it under our bed, hoping to catch one of their conversations. Days went by, and finally, on a rainy Tuesday evening, the recorder caught something. Ryan's voice, sounding almost desperate. "I can't keep doing this. It's not right. She's my wife. She doesn't deserve this." A female voice, cold and unfamiliar, responded, "You owe me, remember? You either continue or things will get ugly." My heart pounded, blood rushing to my ears. Who was this woman? What did Ryan owe her? So many questions swirled in my head. Revenge wasn't just a fleeting thought now. It was turning into a burning need. I was ready to turn the tables on whoever was trying to ruin my marriage. But first, I needed a plan. The need for answers was overwhelming. Every second that passed was torture, not knowing what secret my husband was keeping, not knowing who this mysterious woman was. My once peaceful home now felt like a ticking time bomb. I had to act. I need allies, I thought, turning to my close circle of friends, Jenny and Mark. They'd stood by me through thick and thin, and I trusted them implicitly. I played the recording to them, and their reactions mirrored my own shock and anger. Jenny, ever the planner, said with a steely look, "We're going to find out who this woman is and what she wants." Mark, the tech guru of our trio, suggested we trace the unknown calls. A few clicks and codes later, we had a lead. The calls originated from a tiny coffee shop downtown, known for its quiet corners and private booths. Dressed in inconspicuous clothing, the three of us decided to stake out the cafe. Hours passed with no sign of the mysterious woman. Just when I was about to give up, she walked in. Her raven black hair, red lips, and striking green eyes made her stand out instantly. She seemed to be waiting for someone, nervously glancing at her phone. Suddenly, the door swung open again. My heart skipped a beat. It was Ryan. Their conversation was hushed, but the tension between them was palpable. I needed to hear their conversation. Thinking on my feet, I took out my phone, dialed the cafe's number, and informed them of a fake gas leak. Panic ensued, and everyone evacuated, including Ryan and the mystery woman. As they stepped out, Jenny, pretending to be a panicked patron, accidentally spilled her coffee on the woman, while I quickly slipped another voice recorder into Ryan's coat pocket. As we regrouped at Jenny's apartment later, we anxiously played back the recording. "She's getting suspicious," Ryan whispered. "You think I care? You know what you have to do," she retorted. Ryan's voice trembled. "This isn't about money anymore, is it? It's about control." She laughed, a chilling sound. "You're in no position to question me." I sat there, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and betrayal. But underlying all of it was a burning determination. I needed to confront Ryan, but not before I found out who this woman truly was and what she wanted. As the evening turned into night, Mark made a startling discovery. The woman, it turns out, was Clara, a name that took me back to our college days. Clara was Ryan's ex-girlfriend, known for her manipulative tendencies and vengeful streaks. But why was she back? And what hold did she have over Ryan? I decided then and there that Clara had picked the wrong woman to mess with. Revenge wasn't just an idea, it was a plan in motion. That night, my mind was abuzz with memories of Clara. The extravagant parties she'd throw, the trail of broken hearts she'd left, and the rumors of her involvement in some shady dealings. I thought she'd disappeared from our lives for good, I mused aloud. Jenny squeezed my hand. "We'll get through this, no matter what she's planning." The next morning, we were back at the coffee shop. Our mission: to uncover Clara's current life. Mark, with his penchant for all things tech, had hacked into Clara's social media accounts. As we scrolled through her pictures, one caught my eye: Clara at a high-end casino, surrounded by well-known criminals. "That's it," Mark whispered, pointing to a man beside Clara. "That's Dmitry Voronov, one of the most feared mobsters in the city." The pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Clara was in deep with some seriously dangerous people. But how did Ryan fit into all of this? My determination to find answers took us to the casino. It was opulent, with gold trimmings, chandeliers, and an atmosphere charged with anticipation. Clara was there, seated at a high-stakes poker table with Voronov. I'd come prepared. With a wig and a change of clothes, I was unrecognizable. Taking a deep breath, I approached the poker table and asked for a game. To my surprise, Clara didn't recognize me. As the game progressed, I could feel Clara's frustration rising. I was winning, and she didn't like it. Taking a gamble, I leaned in and whispered, "You might be used to having control, but not tonight." Clara's eyes widened, but before she could react, I pulled out an envelope. It contained photos of her with Voronov, evidence of their illicit dealings. "What do you want?" she hissed. "I want you to leave my husband alone," I stated. She scoffed. "You think this is about Ryan? This is bigger than your little love story." I had her attention now. "Tell me everything, or these go to the police." She sighed, defeated. "Fine. Ryan owes me. Years ago, I helped him out financially, and now I need him to pay up. Voronov is my insurance. But trust me, once I get what I want, Ryan will be free." I was taken aback. This was about money? "How much does he owe you?" $50,000, she replied. Mark, who had been listening in, interjected, "Looks like you're having a bad night, Clara. What if we strike a deal?" And just like that, we had a plan. A poker game where the stakes were high and the outcome could change everything. As the evening wore on, our high-stakes poker game drew a crowd. Clara, with her piercing eyes and sharp wit, was known as a force to be reckoned with at the casino. But tonight, she looked rattled. Every time she glanced my way, her confidence seemed to wane. I thought to myself, is this really about the money, or is there something more? The tension was palpable. "You're playing with fire," Clara whispered menacingly during a break. I replied, "Sometimes fire is the only way to cleanse." Mark, ever the tech genius, had set up a discreet live stream of the game. Thousands were now watching online, enraptured by the unfolding drama. He'd also set up a crowdfund, pitching it as the game to save a marriage. Donations started pouring in. As the hours ticked by, the pot grew larger and larger. Clara was losing, and she knew it. The mounting pressure made her sloppy. Finally, in a dramatic final hand, I won. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about taking back control. I could see the defeat in Clara's eyes, and for a brief moment, I felt sorry for her. But then I remembered all the pain and chaos she had brought into my life. Jenny sidled up to me, her eyes shining. "You did it!" I hugged her tightly. "We did it!" We had more than enough to pay off Ryan's debt, with a significant amount left over. I decided to donate it to a charity supporting victims of scams. However, the story doesn't end here. With Clara defeated at the poker table, we had a false sense of security. Little did we know that Voronov wasn't going to let things go so easily. 2 days later, as I was leaving work, a black car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing Voronov's cold, steely eyes. "You may have won the game," he hissed, "but you haven't won the war." Chills ran down my spine. I had no doubt he was serious. "I suggest you pay back every penny," he continued, "or your dear husband will pay the price." I was stunned. This had gone far beyond a simple debt. It was personal, and Voronov was out for revenge. That night, my mind raced as I considered our options. Going to the police seemed the obvious choice, but would they be able to protect us from someone as powerful and well-connected as Voronov? What had Ryan gotten us into? As I lay in bed, a plan began to form. If we were going to get out of this, we needed to be strategic and use the element of surprise. "I have an idea," I said to myself, a glint of determination in my eyes. The memories of Ryan's pleading eyes when I found him bound and gagged in that dingy basement played on a loop in my mind. I was running on pure adrenaline as Clara and I made our way to the high-stakes poker table. Voronov's goons kept a close eye on us, ensuring we didn't try to flee or pull a fast one. The room was smoke-filled, and an underlying tension hung thick in the air. Old men with sharp eyes and younger ones with even sharper suits surrounded the table. The chandelier overhead cast shadows that made it seem like we were all part of some grotesque painting. "She's just a friend," Ryan's words echoed in my mind. It seemed surreal that all this chaos stemmed from a woman who was supposedly just a friend. "Welcome to the table, Mrs. Ryan," sneered Voronov, wearing an obnoxious gold suit that screamed mobster. The stakes? Enough money to clear Ryan's debts and my husband's life. Clara, who had grown up in underground poker circuits, had taught me a thing or two over the past few days. But nothing can truly prepare you for a game where your husband's life is on the line. Chips were tossed, cards were dealt, eyes darted. "You got this," I whispered to myself, trying to calm my racing heart. 2 hours felt like 2 lifetimes. Bluffs were called, hands were lost, and the pile of chips in front of me slowly but surely began to grow. With every hand won, Voronov's smile faded just a smidge, replaced by a mounting fury. Clara sent me silent nods of encouragement from the sidelines. The final hand arrived. I had a pair of queens. Betting went around the table. Voronov raised the stakes, trying to intimidate me into folding, but I saw the briefest flash of doubt in his eyes. He was bluffing. I pushed all my chips to the center of the table. All in. The room was silent. Voronov sneered. "You think you can beat me with a mere pair of queens?" He laid out his cards, a pair of tens. The room erupted in gasps and mumbled conversations. The stack of money in the middle of the table was pushed towards me. Voronov, furious and embarrassed, stormed out with a trail of goons behind him. Clara and I rushed back to the basement. With the debts cleared, Ryan was released, albeit with a few bruises. As we drove back home, the weight of what had transpired began to sink in. Ryan sobbed, apologizing for the mess he had dragged us into. And Clara, the mysterious woman who was supposedly just a friend, turned out to be his savior and mine. It was she who had tipped off Ryan about Voronov's tricks at poker, leading to his debt in the first place. It was a ploy to get back at Voronov for a personal vendetta. But she hadn't anticipated things to escalate this far. Ryan and I needed time to rebuild, to find trust again. And while Clara's actions had indirectly put us in danger, she was also the reason we got out of it. We parted on amicable terms, with her heading back to the poker circuit, hoping to use the winnings to bring down more corrupt players like Voronov. Life slowly returned to its mundane rhythm, but with a newfound appreciation for the ordinary moments. Late-night calls were replaced by late-night cuddles, and I couldn't have been happier. The end of this chapter, however, was just the beginning of another. Ryan and I started attending therapy, both as a couple and individually. We opened a small cafe using the winnings as seed money, naming it Clara's, as a nod to the woman who changed our lives in more ways than one. As for Voronov, rumors say he left the country, his reputation tarnished, but every so often I can't help but glance over my shoulder, just in case. After all, in a game of high stakes, you can never be too careful.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.